Pleasant good evening to one and all my fans, new viewers, and to those who may come across the channel whenever you are on YouTube. It's my pleasure to come before you on a weekly basis to share a good word with you. Because a good word is so vitally important where we live in a world that adjectives such as treacherous, barbarous, brutal, callous can be used to describe events happening in all corners of the world. So whether it's on a national level, regional, international level, I'm sure it is quite easy for any one of you to find such an example to describe the world in which we live. So our mission on this channel is to share, disseminate ideas and knowledge, and to have you, be part of the experience through your comments in the comment section on the channel. And it's indeed our great pleasure to bring that good word in this kind of world in which we live. And today was a sad day. One of my colleagues, a young, promising professional, young woman of 30 years, and a sister of 31 years, Amanda and Alicia Charles, were laid to rest, where they suffered their untimely death on February 17th when we had the blackout in Trinidad and Tobago. Some miscreant or miscreants firebombed where they live and took away their promising lives. So it was a day that was indeed sad for their family. I mean, the pain that they experienced, we can only imagine. And I would just like using this forum to extend my sympathies to that family and all the support that they will need to cope with such a tragedy. So I know my University of the Southern Caribbean has provided support and will continue to provide support. And certainly, we need to go beyond the call to help this family, navigate and survive such a colossal tragedy and loss. So once again, the Charles family, if you happen to come across this channel, you will hear what I'm saying here. I have interacted with the young lady and certainly was impressed with the professionalism, concern for others, and knowledge of the job, and the great future that lied before her. But sadly, as I said a while ago, some miscreant or miscreants had other plans, but we know our God is a powerful God, so we place it in the hands of the Almighty in terms of the way forward. So my condolences once again to you, and it's just an example of the kind of world in which we live. All right. So as usual, in doing this presentation, we start with a word, a motivational word, and today I'm saying to you that demonstrating empathy is priceless, because whatever station you are in life, once people could feel that you feel what they are feeling, you're going to be supported. Your productivity will increase, right? Because we must always remember, we deal with flesh and blood, and not just a unit of production. Human beings are just units of production. We're far more than that. So managers, supervisors, people in any walk of life, always bear that in mind, in that, active listening with intent, listening without judgment could go a long way in solving many difficulties and making people feel respected and appreciated. So that's the reason I said that empathy is priceless. And the simple meaning behind it is that the person understands what you feel and can share that feeling with you, because you yourself will realize that they feel and understand what you feel. So of course we can develop that, we can work on that, and make more people feel embraced by being empathetic. So I want you to ponder on that word and to draw on the power behind what it means and demonstrate it and try to make life this treacherous life that some of you may say we are living. I mean, you can use positive adjectives also, because life, as I said in previous presentation, is a gift, and it's worth making the best of that gift on a daily basis. But as we are well aware of the many, horrendous events that are happening around us, so we always have to strike a balance in terms of that. So put down that word and draw the inspiration from it and make it part of your daily activities. So as usual, remind you of the services that we offer. We offer life and business coaching, one-on-one sessions. You call, you make an appointment, or you send an email. We offer workshops in leadership, in anger management, conflict resolution, cooperative development, community development, public speaking, entrepreneurship, psychology and you, the role of psychology in business, emotional intelligence. The presentation I'm doing today is entitled that, and a host of other topic areas. All you have to do is give us a call at 1-868-778-5141, 1-868-779-2544, or email us at leadershipwithadifference@gmail.com. So call us, email us. We are ready to serve in a professional way and in a way that will embrace you as part of the process. So we await your call, we await your email to extend our services to you. So having done those two aspects of our talk today, we now actually moving to the presentation. And the presentation today is entitled Developing Emotional Intelligence is Priceless. So just as empathy is priceless, developing emotional intelligence is priceless. In the past, most of the focus was on people with a high IQ, and having a high IQ was seen as a passport for great success in life. This doesn't mean that people with high IQs have not achieved, and significantly so. But research has shown more and more that those high in emotional intelligence tend to be more successful in life. Now, there are people with high IQs and high in emotional intelligence. There are people with high IQs and low in emotional intelligence. There are people who are very low IQs and very high in emotional intelligence. As a matter of fact, you have sometimes people very high IQs, people with PhDs and all forms of high qualification, working for people who are low IQs, who people may consider not too smart. But then the question is, what is smart and how smart is smart, all right? So we need to appreciate what exactly is emotional intelligence. So what is emotional intelligence? Simply put, it is understanding your emotion and that of others and being able to operate in an appropriate manner so that, proper decisions can be made. So an understanding of your own emotion and others that will allow you to act in a most appropriate manner, in essence, is what emotional intelligence is all about. The next question is, why is this so important? It is so important because, we as human beings are primed to act emotionally before we act rationally. What do I mean? Through our senses, we pick up information from the world that is relayed to our brains, whether it's via the optic nerve or through the auditory passages or via the spinal cord on the way to the brain. So those sensory information will first of all reach the area of the brain known as the limbic system, the emotional center of the brain. The limbic system consists of the thalamus, the relay system, the hypothalamus, which regulates temperature, the hippocampus, that plays a role in memory, and the amygdala, which is the emotional evaluator of the brain. So the information first reaches that part of the brain, all right? So we are primed to act in an emotional way before we act rationally, because the frontal cortex is, you know, the front part of the brain. So I want to draw an example. In reading one of Dr. Daniel Coleman's book on emotional intelligence, he drew a very tragic story to indicate how we are primed to firstly operate on emotions. And in that book, he drew an example of a family. I think the name of the family was the Crabtree family, if I recall correctly. And their daughter went out, which they were aware of. The daughter was not at home. But for some reason, the daughter decided to pull a prank on them. And she returned home without they having that knowledge. And was hiding in the attic of the house. And as they entered the house, of course, they acknowledged that she certainly is not at home. They heard a noise or a boo to frighten them as they entered. And the father instinctively pulled out his gun and shot into the attic. And she was killed. So the emotion and that fear that was generated, that there is an intruder in the place, sparked that reaction. And one could only imagine the flood of sadness and other type of emotion that would overcome them when they recognized was their very daughter who was shot and killed. So emotional intelligence is very important in terms of its application as best as we can to avoid situations like these. But given the circumstances and the background to it, it would have been very difficult for them not to have acted otherwise, because I think that would have been a kind of instinctive response of most people. So how does emotional intelligence come into play to make that qualitative difference? There must be that two-way communication between the limbic system and the frontal cortex, because when you are overtaken by any emotion, if you cannot be rational and have that two-way communication, it means you'll be unable to self-regulate. So self-regulation is an important principle in this whole process of mastering emotional intelligence. And for it to take place, we have to remember that when we feel what we feel from our emotions, we need to have some thought coming into play, because if that does not take place, there will be unintended consequences. As Dr. Coleman so rightly explained, when we are overtaken by fear and anxiety, these kinds of stuff, our body becomes all prime up. The amygdala is an alert, hyper state to detect any perceived threat. All right. So there's a saying that when you are fearful, when you are anxious, you virtually cannot think clearly, and it's actually so, because that frontal cortex is virtually shut down, where you cannot apply rational thought, because it's just the emotions that are driving you. So you might be in an examination situation, you're well prepared, you know the work, but because of your anxiety and your fear about dealing with the exam, you cannot remember anything, because your body is in this hype state. And it's only when, after the exam, when your body becomes relaxed again, you are remembering, but then it's all too late, So being able to regulate yourself when you're confronted with situations, being aware of the emotions that you experience, how it makes you feel, how it makes you think, how it makes you behave. Because when you think of an emotion, there is an affective part, a feeling part that most people consider to be the emotion. There is the cognitive part in terms of the thinking. There is also the part that promotes physiological changes in the body. For example, fear. You have a ton load of hormones via the endocrine system being pumped into the bloodstream, adrenaline, cortisol. As we know, too much of cortisol over time can be very damaging to the body in terms of the hardening of the arteries and other complications that can arise from that, right? We also have the sympathetic nervous system consisting of the, we have the autonomic nervous system consisting of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system, activates major organs like the lungs, where you have increased respiration, the heart, increased heart rate, all involuntary. That's why it's called the autonomic nervous system. And when the element fear or anger is no longer there, then it promotes that sense of relaxation, and this is where the parasympathetic nervous system comes in. So under the emotion of anger and that kind of stuff and fear, you have both the endocrine and the autonomic nervous system working in conjunction that prepares the body for what is called the fight or flight scenario. So when we are experiencing an emotion, according to Dr. Bradbury and Greaves, there are a number of things that we should be aware of. And one of the principles that they spoke about in the numerous books on emotional intelligence is the question of self-awareness. Being aware of the emotions that you experience. How do you feel, right, physically? Do you feel your muscles tightening? Do you feel your temperature increasing? As I said before, increased respiration, heart rate, all right? Being aware of those things in a deep way is a step in the right direction, because if you are unaware of how your emotional state and what it promotes, you will not be in a position to manage it. And this is where the second principle comes in of self-management. The more aware you are of the emotions that you experience, is the better place you are to manage it, all right? Because, as I said earlier, unintended consequences from uncontrolled emotions could be jail time, could be death, all right? So we have to, always, pull back, take a deep breath, walk away, ensure that the frontal cortex comes into play where we can think when we feel, the emotions coming on. And in that way, self-regulation could certainly come to pass and save us from disaster. So the principles of self-awareness and self-management will concern you, the individual. So I asked the question, why is it important? Those two illustrations clearly shows how important it is for us to develop emotional intelligence. That's why I made the statement that developing emotional intelligence is priceless. But remember the definition. It's not only understanding your emotions, but that of others. Some individuals are naturally blessed with a knack without perhaps any conscious effort on their part to be aware of not only themselves, but others. So such individuals, if you are so blessed, what a blessing to have, in that you will always be in a position to perhaps make appropriate decisions most of the times. So the next principle is social awareness. Being aware and feeling what you're feeling through others. Sometimes people may enter a situation and they just feel uneasy. And oftentimes if you ignore how you feel, it could be tragic. So sometimes do not wait to get a full explanation of what is happening. But once you feel that level of discomfort, certainly try to depart from such a situation. Right? I remember hearing a Harvard professor in a TED Talk making a very strong and pertinent point. That it only takes a person 4 seconds to know if another person appreciates or doesn't appreciate it. 4 seconds. And being in the field of psychology, I could concur. But just being cautious too, we cannot jump to conclusions. But we have that kind of capacity sometimes to feel those kinds of things, you know what I mean? And when we have that awareness of what we feel in through others, it is important to be guided by it, Either sometimes it can be positive, sometimes it can be negative, but allow that awareness of what we are feeling through others to guide our behavior and to guide our understanding to inform what we should do in such circumstances. And the last principle he spoke about is the question of relationship management. Because just think about it. If you master your own self, or you are growing along that pathway, or being more aware of your emotions, managing them based on that awareness, being aware of others and their emotional state, you will be in a very good position to manage people. So all people in a leadership position in life, all people in any position in life, if you could strengthen your emotional intelligence, it will certainly be a plus. It will be a priceless development. And according to those researchers, Bakari agrees, no matter where you score, through the research, they develop a 28-point questionnaire driven by the research that will give you a score where you stand on the scale. If you score low, it's not a despair. Certainly, you can improve. It will take conscious effort to improve because, as I always tell people, if you're a psychologist and you train for 7 years, remember the other 43 years of your life will have conditioned you into a lot of habits that mightn't be ideal. So even with your training, you have to always be on guard not to fall back into those types of tendencies. So the good news is that we can work and improve where we start. So when I say that emotional intelligence is priceless, from those illustrations so far, I'm certain you will agree with me. All right? The researchers also found out that they recognize that people with high IQ, 20%, if I use the figures correctly, of them were influencing. 70% of them with high IQs are only influencing 20% of persons. And 20% of persons with high emotional intelligence were influencing 70% of persons. So that was a motivator to dig deeper into why that is so. All right? And as I said earlier on, if I cite, as I did cite it in a previous presentation when I did that, certification is not qualification. So Richard Branson, the British entrepreneur, I remember reading a story where a principal, he unlike Zuckerberg and Gates, he dropped out of high school, right? And he was told he will end up in prison or be a great businessman, or he came out the latter, right? And the point is, this guy who dropped out of high school, who some time back was through the Business Guardian, was advising people doing PhDs and all sorts of people in business, a man who dropped out of high school have, that level of knowledge, and we have to say emotional intelligence will have to be a factor in the equation. Because if you look at IQ, he may have been rated low on the scale, and yet he was employing people of all kind of high IQs. So I always make the argument, who really is smart? Is he not smart? Of course, super smart, So that was just one illustration that made the point that people sometimes with low IQs, but high in emotional intelligence, on top of the world, using that illustration, all right? I remember in another book in my studies on emotional intelligence, they cited a student. When that student got a C, that was a great cause for celebration. And anything that was happening in school, he was the go-to person, in that he was the man who was a leader, acknowledged leader, to set up things and to influence things. So whilst he might have been low in terms of IQ, the argument was made that this guy could be as successful as anyone else, but it's a matter of just aligning that talent and skill and great knowledge in terms of relating and pulling people together and influencing people to be just as successful as anyone else who might have been high in IQ. So we are seeing that if you're high in IQ and you could develop emotional intelligence, well, that is a super position to be in. If you're low in emotional intelligence, there's not a cause for despair. You can consciously work on improving it by gaining that awareness of your weak areas and working to change it around. to become more sensitive and attuned with yourself and others. And certainly, the sky certainly will be the limit being in that position. So developing EQ, emotional intelligence, is really, really a wonderful thing that we should all, pursue in terms of making a huger impact in all of the various things we would like to achieve in life. And remember, anything to be achieved in life, as I said in another presentation, it is through people. So we all need a heightened sense of emotional intelligence to walk that pathway. For example, if you, in management, if you develop, whether it's management or teaching, if you could develop a rapport with your employees, if you develop a rapport with your students, you will understand them on a deeper level. All right, you will understand more, they will share with you when they gain that confidence, that freedom, and you'll better be able to appreciate the various states that they will be in emotionally and otherwise. And in that way, you will be able to really make proper decisions. I remember in one of my things I was studying in the area that, some managers who had that knack, they will see somebody come to work and, they will recognize something is not right. And they might tell them, all right, take the day off. Now, this is another suggestion for people that start up willy-nilly. But sometimes you could just sense that something is not right, and if you have that heightened acuity, it certainly puts you in a better position to make certain decisions in life. If you, in the teaching profession as I am, as a lecturer, it certainly can help, in that, you will be able to, to listen, to observe, and to get a feeling of what is happening. And you could probably inquire at a deeper level to understand what is happening. And you will certainly be in a position where you can make a proper decision. For example, today I was in a session hosted by UPC, University for Peace out of Costa Rica. Today they started the Happiness Forum. And a fellow psychologist out of